it is my pleasure to introduce Reverend Patrick Pollard, our senior minister here at the center, for his message today.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, everyone, for preparing this nice introduction. To the science of mind, and I welcome everyone here. The science of mind is the study of life and the nature of the laws of thought, the conception that we live in a spiritual universe, that God is in us, around us, and for us, and there is nothing against us. That's one of the definitions. There are 3 or 4 different definitions. All are compatible. They work together. They explain more and more in greater depth what the science of mind really is. Dr. Holmes also said, he's the founder of religious science, the science of mind, and the New Thought movement that came by. He founded the science of mind. And here is something that he said: spirituality is natural goodness. God is not a person. God is a presence personified in us. Spirituality is not a thing. It is the atmosphere of God's presence, goodness, truth, and beauty. End of quote. I tell you, that's the clearest and the most makes sense statement of what spirituality is. Too long I used to believe when I was growing up that spirituality is a woo-woo kind of thing. You sit down and cross your legs and hold your fingers together and you go woo or ooh, and I used to think that was spirituality. That's a spiritual practice. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but that's one of the practices in the overall and world universal encompassing spirituality. You and I are spiritual beings. So spirituality is something that comes naturally to us. We design it so that we have a flow, and it's called spirituality is natural goodness. And when you observe what we are about as human beings, I couldn't find a statement that said we are spiritual beings and we ought to be loving and kind to each other. So this is what we teach and practice with enthusiasm and conviction. We are all made in the image and likeness of God, the one original life, the life of all life, the being of all beings, the one of all ones, and the individuality that we experience is simply a manifestation, an individuation of God. Individually and collectively, we experience a presence that we know but cannot define. We know it because we can experience in the silence of your mind, in the silence of your heart. When you listen, something about you moves. It's mental and it's spiritual. How do you define that? That's spiritual action. Now, this is what all of us would like to be able to say that we practice every day. Dr. Holmes on page 27 says, we approach it normally, happily, willing to accept, glad to experiment, hoping and believing that as the result of our efforts, we shall each derive a greater good, a sound understanding of the natural laws of life as they apply to the individual and his relationship to the whole individual scheme of things. So how do you like to have that as a spiritual philosophy that you can live by and know that you're not asking anyone to do anything strange with their bodies or with their life or their loved ones? Well, here's a quote that Frank Lloyd Wright said that I think is very apropos today. He says, what is needed most in architecture today is the very thing most needed in life: integrity. So this begs the question, end of quote, rather. Integrity, that was Frank Lloyd Wright. So I'm saying this begs the question, is your commitment greater than your resistance? What are you committed to, and what do you resist? And how is your resistance fighting your commitment? You know, a lot of us make commitments and we make promises to ourselves to be, do, and act in certain ways, and we find our actions contrary to our commitment, to our promise to ourselves, to our promise to even what we think of a higher consciousness. So I'd like to share an additional reading in the Science of Mind from, I love what like Gary read with us today. But listen, on page 446 of the Science of Mind, I quote, "The integrity of the universe cannot be questioned or doubted. The spirit must be and is perfect. That which is back of everything must be good, must be complete, must be love and on harmony. When we are out of harmony with some special good, it is because we are off track along the particular line of the activity of spirit." End of quote. That's a tremendous passage of the writings of Science of Mind. He's talking about integrity and how we either honor or dishonor our own integrity. What does integrity really mean? What does it stand for? So I looked it up. You know, I like to look up words. And integrity is defined as this: to make whole, wholeness, uprightness, virtue, honesty, soundness, completeness. End of definition. That is integrity. How do we measure up to integrity when we look at our own lives? Are we willing to follow our professed beliefs about spirituality, about human relationships, about the way things we would like to see happen? What are we doing when we say we want to do something? Do we do the thing, or do we dishonor ourselves by living a different way? A lot of people profess things. You know, you profess a wonderful flowery way about how to be with others, and then you step into life and you find yourself totally contradicting it. How do I measure up in my daily life? Is there still within my unconscious acting as a contradiction of my commitment that creates resistance? And I have to answer that question for myself. And I'm putting it out there so that you could consider it. Answer the question to yourself. How am I measuring up to the idea of integrity? The questions of self-examination are worth the time and effort. And what is the payoff? And I'll say that in a different way. What a payoff! Because there is no bargain for genuineness, for follow through on that which is good and which we believe is right. There's no substitution for that. Do I live a principle-centered life? And I have to answer a question. What vision drives my action? When you act, are you driven by some vision? Is your life vision driven? And I ask myself the question, is my life vision driven? I don't want to answer to you right now, but I will answer the question any other time. In the Science of Mind, we find Dr. Holmes again says, we find faith in God is a spiritual quality of the mind. Did you know that? Faith in God is a spiritual quality of the mind, and an understanding faith is based on immutable principle. Its action is higher than that of the intellect because it is born of intuition. Did you know that? That faith in God is actually intuition, but it's not unexplainable. It just doesn't have a bottom line. Do you have faith in God or not? On page 479 of the Science of Mind, again, we're talking about what we believe and how we practice it. The reason I say this is because even those people who attend a Science of Mind regularly seem to miss a few things that was written in the book. Well, here's page 479. It says, we are to believe in ourselves because we believe in God. The two are one. We are to know that passing events cannot hinder the onward march of the soul. The temporal imperfection of the human cannot dim the eternal integrity of the divine. End of quote. The temporal imperfection of the human cannot dim the eternal integrity of the divine. So I'm saying this because too many times we judge a situation based on the failure of one person. And we throw the baby out with the water, so to speak. We have to recognize, first of all, we're all spiritual beings made in the image and likeness of God. We don't always practice spirituality because we don't take enough time to think about not only our origin, but where are we going? What is the purpose of my life here? How would you like to see life unfold for you and for others? What can you and I do in terms of spiritual practice that will allow our commitment, our action to be driven by our commitment? So this is why and how we can hold a vision. We can see a world in which everyone is living in alignment with their highest vision. Wouldn't that be a great vision to hold? See a world where everyone is living in their highest vision, in full alignment with their highest vision. Is your commitment greater than your resistance? A question we all should consider answering. Investigate thoroughly and thoughtfully. That's my suggestion. How is my stepping out in alignment with my vision and my verbal house? I have a verbal house. All of us have a verbal house. Do you know that? That you live in what you have spoken about, what you think about, what you hold as true to you, and what you hold as false. You live in all, that's where you live. And a lot of us experience what we have predicted in the house that we've created through our verbal, mental, and spiritual attachment. We are to know that passing events cannot hinder the onward march of the soul. Don't be hooked on something that has already passed and doesn't lead you to another better solution. Too many times we reiterate, repeat, re-practice, reinvent what does not work. What we teach is something that works. It really does. Here's a quote from Frank Lloyd Wright. He says, what is needed most, and I gave this before, in architecture today is the very thing most needed in life. You know what it is? Let me say it again. Or Frank Lloyd Wright. What is needed most in architecture today is the very thing most needed in life: integrity. Do you know we just saw a building collapse in Florida? I said just, it's a few weeks now, maybe over a month. Several people are still not accounted for. A fireman who was digging to help find people found the remains of his little daughter, a very bright, sparkly little human being, crushed to death. Integrity, the integrity of the building was compromised. Well, if you use that as a metaphor for your life, how are you living in integrity with your own values? We know that passing events cannot hinder the onward march of the soul. So let's keep moving forward. What is needed, Frank Lloyd Wright says, what is needed most in architecture today is the very thing needed in, rather, he said, most needed in life: integrity. The temporal imperfection of the human cannot dim the eternal integrity of the divine. That's Dr. Holmes. The temporal imperfection of the human, temporal perfection, imperfection rather, temporal imperfection of the human cannot dim the integrity of the divine. When we look within, and can we see, excuse me, how we have been out of integrity with our own selves? In the Bible, it says, in my Father's house are many mansions. Here's a quote: this world, with all its wonders, is not the only one that we shall inhabit. There are many others, and we shall inhabit in them in time. If this life were only one life, Jesus would have told his followers so. He held out no false promises, never deceived. He spoke only the truth. Page 497 of the Science of Mind. Let us all, my dear friends, pay attention to the pattern of our thoughts. The pattern of your thought, the pattern of your thinking is far more important and critical than what you are thinking. Because the pattern of your thinking is what designs the street on which you walk, the house in which you live, the happiness that you have or lack of, the lack that you feel. That's the solid truth. Let us all embrace the truth of our own being and open our hearts to divine love and compassion. Know that you can each day, each moment, step out with the Great Spirit as a companion every moment, every step of the way. This is how it's possible to live. It doesn't mean you have to change your job unless it's, of course, illegal, and you don't have to admit that now. But you don't have to change your job. What you have to do is change your thinking. When you change your thinking, you change your life. If you want a life that is happy, that is peaceful, that contributes to the benefit of not only your world, but that of many others, that you are a blessing to other people when you meet them, when they meet you, you can do that through changing your thinking. So today, I send my love and blessings to you, and I hope that for the rest of your life, you find the road to peace, to joy, to happiness, and to true spiritual practice. I love you. Thank you very much. God bless. And so it is. So if you have a question at this point, because I know that when you listen, your mind is chattering at the same time. And the only thing you're going to take home is what your mind has been chattering about, not what you heard. You don't always take everything you heard home. What you take home, in other words, home into your heart and into your life and into your practice, what you take is the conversation you are having with you while you're listening to me and looking at me and making your own statements within yourself. That's what you take away. And I am hoping that you can filter the self-talk out during this conversation and listen to something that might shift the tendency of your thinking, the pattern of your thinking, and bring you the peace, the happiness, the joy, and the love that would allow you to say, thank you, God, in me. I am so grateful to be one with you because you are one of the one.
Reverend Patrick, we have a question from Bob. I'm just going to let you allow yourself to unmute yourself, Bob, and then go ahead and answer the question today. We weren't able to put the Facebook out there, so let's open it up. Go ahead, Bob.
Bob, go for it.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Bob.
You know, the essence of what we study here is always the same.
Yes.
How to remove what we don't want by the use of prayer. And my question was, how do we release resistance and fear by this method? And you know, I have an approach, but I'm learning. I'm always open to inspiration. So that's why we're here.
Yeah, okay. We are all here for that. So am I. So how do we release resistance and fear, you said? That's the question. And you have a book called The Science of Mind. I would invite you to restudy the first 3 chapters, the first 4 chapters rather. The thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. They're short, they're not long chapters, but that will answer your question. It'll tell you what the cause is, how the cause originated, how the cause can be changed, and how you can practice it and find peace, happiness, and joy in your life. Because no one has given, in my thinking, no one has given a better explanation. I didn't find Science of Mind until I was in, way back, I'm not going to give you my age away, but it's until I was, I found Science of Mind in I graduated from school in 1986. So I was around for 5 years before that. So I found Science of Mind in the 70s. And I haven't given it up. I gave up a lot of other things that I had started that didn't work in my life. But I can tell you Science of Mind works. It worked for me. It worked for several people that I know. In fact, I graduated with 20 people. I had a dog. I graduated with 20 people, and as far as I can think of and recall, every one of them became successful ministers. They graduated from the School of Ministry with me in 1986, and we have been on the road. So I don't know where all of them are because we didn't all keep in touch every year. But a lot of them are still out there, and a lot of them have retired because there were people older than I am. And I'm getting to the place where people are starting to ask me, when are you going to retire? You know, so I retired to move from a center in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and moved to Connecticut to settle here and live. And I thought I was retired until I found out that the reading chapter of the Science of Mind was stopped because the person who ran it lost the impetus after she experienced a major change in family. Her loved one died, and it took too long for her to recover, so she felt she had to give it up. So I took it, and here we are today. It has become Connecticut Center for Spiritual Living. It was just a little reading group of people who gathered in somebody's living room. And there are too many of us right now to gather in a living room. So I hope that I'm so thankful that Gary announced we are going to go back at the Coven House and have our services on Sundays. When do we start that? I don't remember the actual date you mentioned.
Going to do the third week of this month, which is next week.
Yeah.
And then the third in August.
So next Sunday we're going to be in person.
That's right.
Wow.
And then we'll go back to Zoom, and we'll do one in August, and then we'll see what September brings. But we want to get back soon.
This is the way to do it in phases like that, because it gives you a temperature, it gives you a measurement of how many people really are interested in getting back meeting in person. How many people would you like to hug this morning because you're so happy you got together? A bunch. Well, wear a mask, come on Sunday to our service at the Coven House next Sunday. You look it up. It's the Coven House is, I don't remember the street.
27 Washington Street.
27 Washington Street.
Yeah. And it's look at the newsletter. It has all the information in there. You'll be able to get what you need there.
If you know where Highway 9 is,
right.
If you take 9 and you get off at exit 15, it's the first house on the left-hand side. It's a brick building. You can't miss it.
We'll have our sign out in front of the entrance too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am looking forward to lots of hugs because it's wonderful to be able to see face to face and not have to worry about some deadly infectious disease. But at the same time, I'm not saying we should be careless about what's still around, because the virus is still around and it's muting into different phases of itself now. It's trying to outwit us. So let's not give it the mental edge over us, because we can outwit it. We have vaccines and we have take measures and actions that can keep us safe and healthy. I really look forward to that. Thank you very much. I see.
Krushko, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm saying your name wrong when I say it. Okay, you can unmute yourself though, please. And then say your name one more.
Kushru. Kushru, yes, 2 sounds.
Okay.
Greetings, everyone. Reverend Patrick, when you mentioned the word integrity,
yeah,
I'm reflecting that when I'm hold on to my integrity, the people who are so flimsy would purposely instigate me to see how strong my integrity is put to the test, and never let anyone control your feelings, your integrity, because you yourself have control over how you think, how you want your life to be. You know yourself the best. If other people don't understand you, too bad for them. You're not going to make a dog change its habits. Old dogs never learn new tricks. So one has to hang on to their principles no matter what comes. Am I right in my thinking?
So are you an old dog? Just kidding. You're not an old dog. You're just a wise guy. You have matured at a certain level that allows you to have wisdom enough to take care of yourself and not allow others to tramp over you. Because if you give people a chance, they'll use you as a bridge. You can walk right over you, but you don't have to be that kind of a bridge. You can reach out with a hand and say, "I give you my hand." And you have to meet people where they are, yes, but you don't have to lie down with somebody who is sick and dying and want a lift up, or who's hurting because of a broken leg. You don't have to break your leg so you can help them. You have to reach, put your hand out, be strong, and lift them out. So that's how you use your wisdom and your integrity, and you sustain the life that enriches yourself and brings a blessing to others. You can't help it, because if you're living a life of integrity, it will automatically rub off some good in the people close to you.
And that is why even Christ said in one of the Gospels that if one does not listen to your message, rub the dust off your feet and go to the next door.
That's right. That's good teaching. Any other questions, folks? Good. Oh, there's Anne, and I think, okay. Anne is trying to say something.
It's muted.
You're muted, Anne. You're muted.
I think she's saying, never mind.
Never mind. Okay. All right. So it's time for a prayer.
Oh, I just had one quick question. And maybe other people might relate to my question. How do you maintain the integrity when you're going through grief? Because sometimes the closer you get to your authentic self, there's things that are tolerable and things that are not tolerable. And so if people aren't supporting your highest self and supportive and appreciative of you, sometimes you get met with the opposite, people being cruel, kind, or unkind. And so I guess my quandary is, if we're all one and we're all part of the God, within the divine, and everyone has the same divinity, how do you maintain the integrity of when for lack of better words, you're meeting people who are sending resistance or going against the grain or not inclusive of the God consciousness? And how do you make peace when those people fall away? Or, I mean, is it part of God's plan that those people fall away and that you're just, you just stay strong and you stay on your path, like Kushum said, and you just send them light and love regardless?
Well, first of all, if you're living a life of integrity, I can guarantee you this: you're not going to find it difficult to deal with people who criticize you or who find fault or who are putting pressure on you. Because once you are, let me read back to you something that I shared earlier. Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions." End of quote. The world with all its wonders is not the only one that we shall inhabit. There are many others, and we shall inhabit in time. We don't have to wait to die to be in heaven, because heaven is in your heart, heaven is in your mind, heaven is in your behavior. So you don't let people walk all over you because you believe that love is all there is and the rest we made up. Love does not make us a doormat. Being Christ-like is not that you let yourself be taken advantage of. Look at the way Jesus lived and the example that he gave. It's true that he allowed himself to be crucified because he wanted to give us an example. But he says, when you love somebody, that's enough. Now, it doesn't mean that if you love somebody, you continue to let them abuse you. You have,
Right.
you have to, ask for a divorce and let your life be free. You're free to do that. You're not a doormat. That's not what we teach.
No, and I totally, maybe my question isn't, I guess my question is more centered around how do you stay in integrity when you're in grief, when you let the people who aren't honoring you fall away? Because, you've known these people for a long time. At one point, I mean, many of these people, are disillusioned. They're not living in their own truths, or they're with their own pains, they're with their own hurts, and they're not living in their own highest good. So sometimes you can understand people's faults. I know it's not giving them permission to mistreat you, and I totally get that. But grief is, I don't know, at least for me, grief is painful, as I'm sure those who lost loved ones.
I got the message. So the
So
question is, how do you maintain integrity when you are in grief?
yes.
Grief should not cause you to give up your integrity. There is nothing wrong with grief. Grief is a natural part of the human experience. Grief is something that doesn't say you're a bad person because you grieve over the loss or over a pain or over the hurt or over the death of someone you loved or who loved you. No, that is not a compromise. That doesn't compromise your integrity. Your integrity doesn't mean that you are all of a sudden heartless. Let me give you the definition. To make whole, integrity to make whole. How do you make yourself whole if you're hurting? You turn to loved ones. In Science of Mind, we have licensed practitioners who are trained to be able to listen to your suffering and help you through prayer, through what we call spiritual mind treatment, and to call and support you during the week, maybe one call a week, just to say, how are you doing? I hope you're doing better. Is there anything else I can share with you that would help you? This word integrity doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel the pain or feel the suffering. But integrity is, I honor my word. I don't say something and do something else. That's integrity. Integrity says, if I build a house this way, I'm building it to stand, not to fall apart. The house that fell in the building that fell in Florida lost integrity because there was something about the way it was structured could not stand the winds and the weight and the rain and the storms that pestered and continues to pound buildings down in that area. So what are your storms? What comes to you that you feel you cannot stand? That should not break your sense of who you really are. you have integrity, that you're a spiritual being having a human experience, and that you are going to make the best of this human experience. And if you have deep grief, seek a practitioner, a licensed practitioner who's able to pray with you and to offer the sympathy and the empathy that is needed to help you have a new start.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
May I add something on the aspect of grief, especially when Louise brought it up?
Okay.
Can you hear? Just 2 years ago, I lost my beloved friend, whom I was with for 15 years,
Yeah.
and the family treated me just as their own. But after she died, oh, I was almost like a pariah. I could see that they were really not accepting my relationship. And when after she passed away, they really wanted to tear me down. But I stood my stand, and in order to overcome the grief, I wrote I wrote a eulogy myself and shared it with my friends, the ones who had a heart, and the ones who did not. I did not even bother them because I knew that in, when going gets rough, that's when they'll show their colors. And now I'm happy that I could see who my real friends are. So the more you grieve, the more is actually shows that how much you care for that person.
Well,
Thank,
grief
thank
is
you for
something.
sharing, Krishna.
Grief is a very lethargic way of letting go of what hurts. But grief does not give anyone license to be abusive to you. So you don't have to put up with it. You let it go. Don't give it room in your head. You should say to grief, I have no space and time for you. Sorry, you're no longer welcome here. Out. You could talk to grief like that and put it away. It doesn't mean that you are unkind to people. It means that you have to take care of your sanity and your sense of peace and your own mind, and you cannot let people walk over you.
So true.
That is not a good way to live, because you'll never be happy, because you'll always think that this can't be true happening to me. So don't live in that consciousness. Come visit a practitioner. Call up the Science of Mind. Let's sit down and have a counseling session. We will pray with you, and we'll wrap you around with the love of God, and try to help you use the power in you to stand on your two strong legs and to move your strong arms to keep away from you those who try to hurt you, those who are disappointing. When you put your faith in people, you get disappointed. You should have faith in God, and you trust people. But when they stop treating you with respect, you can drop them. And God is not offended with that, because God is too loving to be offended. God is pure love.
Just one last question. When you drop them, since like we're, God and supposed to be, forgiving people, like, ultimately we have to forgive those who offend us, like Jesus did. At least that's how I always grew up, and
Yes.
the teachings I've believed my whole life. It can take so much longer to forgive others than others, but yeah, I guess does God give us patience if it takes us a while to forgive those people? You know, because sometimes you're not like, boom, ready to forgive overnight.
I know what you're saying. You know, people, when you feel like you have forgiven somebody and it doesn't look like it works,
Mm,
that's when you feel like your forgiveness is not accepted.
mm,
But what we want to do then is look at why that person is doing that, because that's where the empathy comes. You not sympathy now, empathy.
mm.
You use empathy to be able to help them because they are blinded by what they've created in their life or what has happened in their life. So what we want to do is to be strong enough so that storm can pass and not knock you over.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yourself in the spirit of life and love, and know that you are a center where God is expressing itself as love, as peace, as wholeness, as perfection, and you don't let anybody wipe their dirty feet on you. You can offer them a bucket of water and a nice warm towel. Go take care of themselves. Okay. All right. Let's have a word of prayer.
Reverend Patrick.
Yes.
Just to be clear, before when we open next week, we're following the CDC guidelines. If you're vaccinated, you don't need to require to wear a mask.
Okay.
As far as integrity go, we're not going to be asking you how you feel about that, or if you had a vaccination. Just do what you're comfortable with. I think we all know if we're not vaccinated, we need to wear a mask. But if you are, then we're following those guidelines.
And if somebody is feeling the symptoms of illness,
yeah, we would request that you.
We would expect that person to live in integrity and
live
not
in integrity. Yes, right.
So that's something we need to announce. We need to say that if you've been vaccinated,
it's in our advertisements and everything.
It's in it. Okay. Yep. Because it's one thing to live in integrity and another thing to let people abuse you, because that's a form of abuse. That is not an excuse to abuse somebody because they live in integrity. We're not saying this is not about living as a doormat. This is about living in courageous, strong love, clear decision-making, not silliness or even the word stupidity may apply. So we have to stand on the grounds of wholeness. And if it is required that when we get together again, that you be vaccinated. And if you are ill, don't show up. Not that we don't like you anymore, but we don't want you to cause other people to get sick. How would you feel if you deliberately made a decision to go and you're ill and you have symptoms and you share those symptoms with somebody who dies later from it? How would you feel? So think about that. Think that that's why we have to set the rules and we have to live by those rules until we have it under control in a way that it is no longer something that is infectious all around, all over the place.